On this episode of WTF, we're unveiling a brand new recipe for keto raviolis. Hello and welcome to WTF, where we help you transform food in your kitchen. I'm Janie.
And I'm Hannah.
And today on WTF, we are talking all about how do you make a keto ravioli that is completely grain-free. And I'm really excited about this recipe because it's not only delicious, it's very, very different from anything that I think we've seen people do out there. So I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and also stick around for our weekly giveaway in order to win these ingredients. Now, I'm going to pass it over to Hannah to start the demo right away because it is kind of an involved process. And as we're going along, we're going to talk about the ingredients, talk about the steps, and talk about what's really important in this recipe to make sure that you're going to get the perfect result every time. All right, Hannah, I know you came up with this recipe through a lot of testing. Can you talk through some of the first steps that people need to do in order to start prepping this keto ravioli?
So the first part of this recipe is super simple. All you're going to need is your food processor and some chicken thighs, as well as our special ingredients. So you're going to want boneless and skinless chicken thighs. We're using thighs just because they have a nice fat content opposed to chicken breast. So what you're going to do is just go ahead and add your thighs right in to your food processor. All right.
And how much chicken is that for this recipe?
This is 500 grams of chicken thighs. You can always adjust this to how much you have. Just remember, you're going to have to adjust the other ingredients as well. All right. So we're going to go ahead and just pulse this and get it started. So you're really looking to form a paste here, so you can't really overmix this. And then we are going to go ahead and add our chicken stock. And for our special ingredients today, it is going to be sodium tripolyphosphate, which is going to add a nice bouncy and juicy texture, nice chew to the pasta in the end. And also our Moo Glue RM, which is going to help glue together all of those chicken proteins.
Cool. And of course, today we're making raviolis because we always like to do a little something special, so we turn them into raviolis to test how far we can take this pasta dough. But if you're like, hey, I just made the dough and I just want to cut it into strips, make it into a fettuccine or whatever other easy shape that you want in order to enjoy, you're certainly welcome to do that as well.
Yeah. And takes out a few steps if you just do fettuccine. So we're going to go ahead and pulse this again.
Right. So you may have seen this, us do this a few weeks ago in our keto shrimp noodle episode, where we used the similar ingredients with shrimp in order to make our keto shrimp noodles. It is kind of a very similar concept where the sodium tripolyphosphate along with the Moo Glue is creating a bind, it's creating water retention, and it's going to allow the pasta to hold its shape. Kind of what we're doing different that's today is really the shaping part, and then also we're starting to test how far we can push these kind of grain-free, meat-based pasta dishes.
Yeah, and I'd love if somebody wanted to try out with other meats and let us know how those meats come out. Maybe pork or something could be a good alternative.
Or turkey if you want a leaner, I guess. I never want a leaner, so I never want turkey. Okay.
So our next step is going to be weighing out and then bagging these. And I've found that 90 grams in an 8x14 bag gives you a good thickness at the end.
And when you say thickness, what are we talking, like a quarter, an eighth, a 16th of an inch?
It's about, I would say, 2 millimeters. It's very thin, and we really do want to go thinner the better. It makes the end process come out just nicer overall. Yep,
so if you're working at home and you don't have an 8x14 or whatever this size is, and the most important thing is getting that thickness correct, and it's not so much about the weight and the bag size, because obviously, if you want to buy this bag, it's available on our website. We'll link to it. But if you just want to work with a bag you already have, just make sure you're focusing on the thickness of that pasta.
Yes. Oops. So we're just going to go ahead and fill a few bags with 90 grams each.
So how much yield are we getting out of this recipe for, in terms of, we're filling a bunch of bags right now, how many bags do we get out of one batch?
So you get about 6 bags per batch, and so the amount of raviolis can range depending on what cookie cutter you're using. So, you know, if you're using a square cookie cutter, you're going to be able to get a higher yield out of each sheet, but if you're using a circle, it's going to be a little bit less. So I'd say anywhere between 24 to about 18 raviolis per batch, and these are pretty hefty anyways as a pasta, so you're not really going to be eating about 8 or more raviolis.
Yeah, and today we're going to be, Hannah's going to be using the vacuum sealer to seal these. If you're at home and you're like, I don't have a vacuum sealer, you can certainly put them into freezer bags. You can put them in between 2 sheets of saran wrap. As long as you're kind of somehow pressing it out evenly to get that thickness, you're good to go. What we like about the vacuum seal bags is if you're doing 6 at a time, you don't necessarily need to use 6 at a time. You can freeze half, you can save it for later. Because this is entirely protein based at this point, it's going to freeze and thaw really, really well. So that's, again, you know, little tips for you're going to do the work, then you can get more yield out of it and less work later on.
Great. So now that we have these all filled up, we're going to seal them, and we're going to be sous videing these at 118 for about 15 minutes. And why 118 is that it's enough to make the TG start to activate and bind those proteins, but it's not going to fully denature all of the proteins. So in the next step, the TG is still going to be able to work on the chicken.
Yep.
Okay, and we will be right back with some sealed and half-cooked pasta sheets. So we are back, and we have one of our sheets vacuum sealed for us. So all we're going to do now is take a rolling pin and roll it out until the mixture's completely filled the bag. And if you really want to get it even, you can stick it between 2 cutting boards or 2 baking sheets and really press it out. But I find the rolling pin works just fine.
Yeah, and we talk a lot about when we use TG that we want to let it rest overnight. At this point, should we let the sheet rest overnight, or can we work with it right away after it's been rolled out?
So I have been, once it's cooked and once it's been rolled out and then cooked, so after that, you're fine to use it. You don't need to let it rest overnight. But in our next step, which we're going to get to in a second, that one you are going to have to rest for, I'd say, at least 8 hours, but overnight is best.
Okay. So if you don't have a sous vide at home, you can still do a water bath cooking method. There are various tutorials online. We haven't done one yet, but you can certainly look that up. The main thing is obviously not overcooking the chicken, because as soon as that chicken protein is denatured, it won't work on the binding step for the ravioli. So if you find that you do, or you're working with the pasta, you accidentally overcook the chicken, I would say just eat it as it is. Don't even bother trying to glue it.
All right, so this is raw, but we have some prepped that have been partially cooked, so we're going to be working with those ones for now. So I found the easiest way to get these out is to cut around all the edges, because this is pretty delicate.
As always, you're going to get the full recipe on the links in the description below, so you can kind of walk through all the different steps of prep and the sous videing and the sealing and all that. And plus, of course, we'll have a short or reel, whatever it's called on this channel. It will be up on this channel as well later in the week.
All right, so go just reveal our pasta sheet. Oops. And as you can see, you can lift it up, and it's completely stuck together, all in one sheet.
Cool.
And we are just going to lay this down, and using our mold, which is just a ring mold, but of course if you want squares, stars, whatever shape you want, you can do that. And I'm going to go ahead and punch these all out. With the ring, you get about 6 per sheet, but with a square, you get about 8.
Yeah, and 6 doesn't sound a lot, but we've definitely taste tested this recipe, and because it's basically almost completely not plant-based, protein-based, it is, it is like very filling. So you're not going to want to eat, like 10 of them at a time. It's going to be a lot.
All right. So now that we have a few, we are going to punch out a few more, and then we can go ahead and make our raviolis. Okay. So for our next step, we are going to be adding our ravioli filling, and this is a duxelle filling made with mushrooms and gelatin and herbs to keep it in a shape. I would recommend having your filling be gelatin based. It really helps obviously keep the shape, and then when you cook it, the gelatin's gonna break down and you're gonna have a nice creamy filling.
Yeah, but I think like this would also be great with like a ricotta or something as well, right? So this is kind of we did the mushroom duxelle. It is really, really tasty because it's got all that mushroom umami. It has the gelatin for the mouthfeel and the flavor, so it has a lot going on for it, but again, you can be creative and do whatever you would like.
So our next step is going to be adding more TG, and so this is going to be binding the 2 sheets together.
Yep. And by TG you mean transglutaminase.
I do mean.
If you're like,
yes.
What's TG?
And we just made a slurry, so this is 1 part water. 1 part TG to 4 parts of water, and we are just going to generously brush the outside.
Right, and this part is kind of why earlier when we were talking about don't overcook the chicken because it's going to denature the protein. So this is kind of why if you accidentally overcook the chicken and the proteins become denatured, the transglutaminase enzyme will no longer work with it. So no matter how much you brush on, it's not going to bind, which we don't want. So this is kind of why I said earlier, if you accidentally do it, then just enjoy the pasta as it is because you won't be able to mold them together.
Exactly. So just doing a little layering here, and then our last part, because these aren't pressed together, our last part, well, honestly, there's an easier way to do this, but so if you just lay a sheet down and you can put the duxelle right into it so it's inverted, and the sheets are going to press together really nicely. So I would highly recommend doing this. If you find a better way, let me know. But I find this works really well.
So this is also why Hannah recommended having the mold as well, because it's easy to then fit it back into a mold that's already the same size.
Exactly. Okay. And you could just put the slurry on the TG upside down, which I probably should have done, but that's okay. And so now that we have our inverted raviolis right now, we're going to wrap them up in some plastic wrap. I'd recommend putting a sheet tray or something on top of them to really weigh them down, really press the 2 sides together, and you're going to wait about 8 hours to a day, and then your raviolis are going to be ready to cook.
Cool. We'll be right back with some finished raviolis that we're going to show you how to make a delicious sauce and also the important steps to finishing the ravioli correctly.
All right.
And we're back and we're ready to finish off those keto raviolis in a delicious sauce and show you the proper technique on how do you cook the raviolis. But first, of course, I wanted to give a moment to this week's giveaway. This week's giveaway will be a bag of Namu glue and a bag of the sodium tripolyphosphate, so you can start making this recipe as well as many of our other keto recipes. In order to enter to win, leave in the comments below what kind of pasta you think you can make with this. It's that easy. All right, back to Hannah.
All right, so we have our raviolis that have been resting overnight. As you can see, they were pressed, wrapped in saran wrap, so they should be all good to go. And just a little reveal for you all. All right, so as we can see, let me lift these out. They are They look a little funky, but they taste good, and they are totally sealed together around the rim, which is what we're looking for. So what we are going to do now is we have a little mushroom cream sauce that's been going, and we found that the best way to cook these raviolis is in a sauce itself. It's a light, easy cooking process. You wouldn't want to boil these, and searing them doesn't really work because they have the bump of the filling. So I would say in a sauce is probably the best method to go about. But of course you could do any sauce you would like. Red sauce, pesto, we have a cream sauce here. And so what we're gonna do is simply add our raviolis into the sauce. And we're gonna wanna turn the heat up because we want this chicken to reach 160, because then we will know it is fully cooked and good to be eaten.
I also wonder, and we haven't tried this, but if you try, let us know how it goes, if you can bake it in the oven.
Oh yeah, I'm sure, yeah, you could do fried ravioli.
Oh, a fried ravioli?
Bread them.
Oh, that sounds great, actually. A little meat-based empanada.
So we're gonna just totally cover these up in the sauce. They kind of disappear, but they'll be back.
Yeah. The sauce, which the recipe will be in the links in the description below, it's very, very fragrant. So there's a lot of notes of rosemary, mushrooms. Obviously, it's chock full of cream and onions, and you can smell all those right now here in the kitchen, and it smells amazing. All right.
We'll just go ahead and add all of them. Why not?
Now, once you've added all of them, approximately how long do you think it takes to finish them off? And how do people know when it's really done?
So I would say no more than 10 minutes until they're fully cooked. I would recommend using a probe just to get the temperature from the inside. You can test just the rim of chicken. You can also temp the inside of the filling, because if the fillings reached 160, you can guess that the meat has also reached 160. And since it's so thin, it's not going to take very long.
Yeah, and one of the nice things about chicken thighs is that it's, it holds up to cooking really well. You don't have to worry about it drying out and becoming like a kind of overcooked chicken flavor.
Yeah. So we're just going to let these simmer for a little bit, and if you need to, you can always add a little bit more chicken stock, a little bit more heavy cream to thin the sauce out. All right.
It smells really good. I'm hungry.
And we're just going to top this off with a little bit of grated Parmesan, because cheese never hurts. And we have just some chives for a little bit of greenery. And there we have our keto chicken ravioli.
That looks great. I'm gonna cut one up so we can kind of see, kind of opening it up. You can kind of definitely see how well it's holding its shape. All right, and of course, the all-important taste test. All right, I'm gonna pull this back towards me.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right. That was a disaster waiting to happen. Here we go. So this is really tasty. So because it's chicken, it definitely has a firmer texture. So you're thinking more like an al dente pasta, not like a really soft and mushy pasta. But the mushrooms add a lot of great flavor in here. Excuse me. It's super, it's got that bite. It has to chew. It's not falling apart. So I think if you try this recipe, you're going to really, really enjoy the results. And also, I noticed you didn't season the chicken, right?
Oh, I would recommend throwing a little bit of salt in there.
Okay.
But as well, if you want to add some other seasonings to it, some onion powder, garlic powder, any dried herbs, I think that would really add to the chicken overall.
Okay, yeah, so you can definitely do it, because I was going to say, the chicken is already pretty flavorful, even without the sauce, but this sauce is definitely enhancing the overall experience. This is a great meal, and again, if you're making them ahead, you can freeze whatever you don't eat, just thaw it out at a later date, make the sauce, and really enjoy it. I hope you love this recipe because we really do. And until next week, from here in the Modernist Pantry Test Kitchen, I'm Janie.
And I'm Hannah.